and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, we are going to do our top all-time Buckeyes. So sort of a Mount Rushmore. We're going to pick a top 4 at each position. So we're going to do 3 position groups on offense. We're going to do quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers, or pass catchers if you want to throw in a tight end in there, which we know that won't happen. But then in another segment, we're going to do defense. So we'll do defensive ends and tackles, so defensive lines as a whole, linebackers as a whole, and then defensive backs, so corners and safeties grouped together there. So we're going to start, guys, on offense, and we're going to start at the quarterback position. That's going to be a very loaded position, especially of late. For a while, Ohio State was not known for the quarterback position, but of late, we know that that has changed, especially under the Ryan Day era. So Greg, Brett are both with me. All 3 of us are Ohio State grads. We're big Buckeye fans, so we kind of know what we're talking about for the most part here, but we're going to agree to disagree on certain things, I feel like. So let me just throw this out there, guys. I want you guys, and I'll start if you want. I'll just lead this one off. I'm going to start, and I'm going to give you my top 4 Ohio State quarterbacks. Now, this is of all time, so it can be any era. This could be, going way back to the 20s or 30s if you want, but I'm going to try to keep it to what I know best. So my number 1 Ohio State quarterback of all, I'm just going to give you my top 4. I'm not going to, and then we can debate it. So I have Justin Fields number 1. Only played 2 years, but what he did in those 2 years was pretty remarkable. Probably should have got to the national championship both years, and just putting up great numbers. Great runner, great passer. I have Justin Fields as my number 1. Here's where it gets tough. There's a lot of debate I had for 2, 3, 4, even down to like 5 and 6, because you can factor in national championships, you can factor in teams as a whole, you can factor in individual numbers, you can do a lot of different things. This is open for interpretation. So I have Justin Fields 1. For 2nd, man, I'm going with Troy Smith. I'm going to go with Troy Smith because he got them to a national title. He won the Heisman Trophy. Didn't put up the numbers of some of these other guys, but was a great leader. And I think if you know his backstory, was a great leader. 3rd. Now I'm just looking at my list and I'm debating some of these. But I'm going to go with CJ Stroud 3rd. I really, if a kick goes through, if one play, Marvin Harrison doesn't get knocked out of that game, I think we're talking about Ohio State as national champions. Never beat Michigan. That's obviously a negative for him. But, I still have him as my 3rd best Buckeye quarterback of all time. And then 4th, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to say the name because I think he's a great leader, not a great quarterback necessarily, but I'm going to go with JT Barrett because I think I'm going to get some pushback on that one, but we'll see. But so my 1 through 4, I'm going to go with Fields. I'm going to go with Troy Smith, CJ Stroud, and JT Barrett. Those are my top 4. So, Greg, you want to take it?
Yeah, I think that's I like the list. I was surprised. I was surprised you had Fields at 1. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I'm kind of thinking about it, but I don't actually have him in my top 4 right now. But that just shows how close it is. And I think the Fields years with COVID were kind of like the forgotten years too. Yeah. But he was absolutely spectacular. So I have Troy Smith at 1.
Okay.
for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. I mean, his numbers retired. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. He got Tressel to stop playing Tressel ball for a couple of years, open it up and throw it a lot. So, but he was obviously a spectacular quarterback. Hits us close to the heart, I think, because we were there at that time too. Number 2, I had Stroud, and I was thinking, man, this might be recency bias coming through, but as far as just being able to throw the football, just the ability to throw the football, and we'll see how it translates to Sundays. But I feel like he and probably Haskins are probably the 2 best throwers of the football that we've maybe ever had at this school. So I'm going with Stroud number 2. I do have Barrett 3, and it's a little bit of a lifetime achievement award.
Yeah.
I mean, he did play 4 years. He was, as you said, a tremendous leader, a tremendous competitor. We wouldn't have won the national championship without him, although we did win it without him, but getting us there and getting us through that regular season was huge. He had a big part in that title. So I'm putting Barrett 3. And then number 4, I kind of wanted to switch up eras a little bit. Can't say any of us ever saw this guy play, but I have Rex Kern at 4.
Yeah.
Just, won a national title. It's interesting that all the quarterbacks we've talked about, we hadn't mentioned any that actually, won a national title, except Barrett's kind of an asterisk.
Yeah.
But Rex Kern, it was probably the iconic quarterback in the Woody Hayes era. So I put him.
Yeah, I had him as my number 5 guy.
And I have Fields right there, and man, that's tough.
Okay. No, that's great. So that's a good list, and we have some differences, which is great. So Brett, let's go to you now. So Ohio State quarterbacks in your top 4.
I mean, I'm clearly going to go Tom Tupa number 1.
Which guy can punt the ball the best?
No, I honestly I have Troy Smith number 1, like Greg does, but I have Justin Fields number 2. So like that was sort of a little recency bias, and I think with the COVID year too, that kind of took away what like some even better stuff we could have saw out of him. So it's kind of like disappointing that we only got that, call it, 1.5 years worth of stuff out of him. After that, I'm a little bit like Justin. It's all pretty tight knit there. You could look at who won national championships. You can look at who was in Heisman running, all that sort of stuff. Recency bias, I think I'm going to go with Greg on this one with CJ Stroud at 3. Which, Justin, I think you maybe had him at 3?
I had him at I had Stroud at 3. Greg had him at 2.
Yep. I like, Greg had him at 2. Yeah, I like him at 3, and I think he might be maybe the best passer we've had. Like Justin Fields had that dynamic, great passer, but he could run too. I think CJ Stroud's accuracy is just off the charts, and I think you're starting to see that a little bit of camp and how he's just being propped up a lot over with the Texans. So after that, Justin, I'm with you. It's Barrett at 4. Greg alluded to it. I don't think we get that national championship in 2014 without him. As much as I love Cardale Jones and what he did in that run, I think, the way Barrett played throughout the year, that it was just, especially after Vaught Tech, which was a lot of, welcome to college football.
Okay. No,
so that'd be my 4. After that, it's sort of like, I have always loved Joe Germain. So he would have plopped right in there in 5 or 6. Rex Kern, obviously. He deserves to be there. This one, I just didn't know where he would go. He's got his name hung on in the rafters. Chick Harley. I just don't like. Is he a quarterback? I don't know what they called him back then. Like
Chick Harley. Chick Harley might come up in the next segment. I have him listed as a running back. So
that's how I was putting him. But I saw him in the list of quarterback. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. And honestly, like, to give an honest opinion, if you've really never seen someone play, it's hard to give an accurate, rundown on them, but
he's just iconic, and it's just one of those things. He's going to get mentioned regardless of whether he falls onto a list or not.
And anyone watching this has not seen Chick Harley play either. So. Literally, yeah. Maybe Rose from the Titanic is still around. Oh man,
just a liar, isn't she?
So, did you guys give any credence to like a Terrell Pryor or a Dwayne Haskins maybe in your top 4? Just curious on that.
Haskins, I did. I thought the team struggled. It wasn't his fault. It was the defense. Was an absolute problem when he was a quarterback. Pryor, loved Pryor, but I don't know. It was tough to put him above some of these others.
Yeah, those were going to be my 2 honorable mentions, because I do think Terrell Pryor is underappreciated, probably a lot because of the tattoo gate and some of the bad connotations that come with him, but he was tremendous. And Haskins was kind of almost the first of, like, besides Cardale in the playoffs, like the first real kind of gunslinger we had in this run of gunslingers that we've now had for the last 5 or so years. He was kind of the first one to really open it up and throw it all around the field, and he could make all the throws, and was spectacular.
Yeah. We definitely have a lot of the same names, because I had Rex Kern right there. I had Joe Germain right there. I had Terrell Pryor right there, and Dwayne Haskins. I think it's just the one season, and the defense was so bad.
So bad.
One, that kind of helped him his stats, but 2, also, the 10-2 or the 11-2 season, which wasn't the prettiest. So also, a guy Greg knows a little bit. Craig Krenzel won us a title. I mean, you got to give him a little bit of credit too. I have him in the top 10 just based on that 2002 season alone.
He was the epitome of game manager. I mean, and he did it in the best way possible. He may not have only thrown 10 passes for a game, but he managed that game well.
And I had to put Cardale Jones in the top 10 too, just based on those 3 games alone.
A 3-game run.
I know there's guys that he's probably going to end up getting bumped out of that list, but he helps bring you a title, and so I think we got a pretty good list there. So in no particular order, I think we have our 4 with however again you want to do the list. Troy Smith, Stroud, Fields, and JT Barrett, I think, are going to be our 4. Pretty solid there, with probably a group of guys getting honorable mention, Rex Kern and Cardale and whoever else. So all right, let's move on to the running back position. This is I know Dave will be sad to miss this one, as his one of his favorite Buckeyes. I know will go on probably this Mount Rushmore here, but I think there's a clear number 1 here. So I would be probably not talking out of turn to say, all right, I think we all probably have Archie Griffin at number 1, 2-time Heisman Trophy winner. So we got to decide on the next 3 guys. So we have to come up with a consensus 4 here. So I let off this one. Greg, you want to take this one?
Yep. So Archie, it kind of begins and ends with Archie. I mean, when you win 2 Heismans, that's pretty telling. And then the one that you alluded to that Dave will be sad to miss is another Heisman Trophy winner, Eddie George, is number 2 on my list. That really goes without explanation, and we all got to see him a lot. And incidentally, one of my takeaways as we continue to go through this, he didn't hit it much on quarterback, but the John Cooper era, that 90s, there are some dudes on those 90s teams that are going to be on all these lists. Some incredible talent. So Eddie George was my number 2. It's after that, it does get tough. And I kind of stayed away from the real old timers, no offense to anyone, just never saw Chick Harley play or Hopalong Cassidy or those guys. They deserve their due, no question about it. I don't have them on my list, but we'll certainly talk about them. I have Ezekiel Elliott as 3. Honestly, if he did nothing more than the last 3 or 4 games of or basically what was it, the last 3 games or the 4, the Michigan game, the Wisconsin game, the Alabama game, and the Oregon game. He could have played only those 4 games, and I think he'd be like number 4 on most people's list.
Right.
Didn't have to do much more than that, but he was pretty great other than that too. But to step up in those when it counted, to me, is championship and Mount Rushmore material. And I put Keith Byers as number 4.
Okay.
Absolute beast, phenomenal college career, and had a great pro career as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great list. And I agree with most of those. So Brett, let's go to you next on this one.
I have the same list as Greg.
Okay.
It is actually in that order. It's the same thing like Chick Harley. It's like, yeah, I want to put him there, but I also, like we said before, we never saw him play, so I don't, it's hard to kind of gauge that. And so we're kind of sticking in that world. Yeah, Zeke, Eddie George, then Zeke, and then I was going Keith Byers. I was kind of contemplating, and you get pushback or you get all right, but Maurice Clarett, that freshman year, that just an amazing year that he had, but it's such a small window that he gave us, so it's really tough to put him there. But I had to consider him.
Okay. I have 3 of the same 4 as you guys. So obviously Archie 1. I put Ezekiel Elliott at 2, just based on that championship season. And the Buckeyes, I think that Eddie George Heisman season, they actually got upset by Michigan, I believe. And that was the Tim Biaka-Batuka game, which I don't even know how old we were, 13 or something like that, 14. And I still remember feeling sick about that. So for that reason, I flipped those 2 and 3, but it's whatever on that. But my number 4 guy, I had J.K. Dobbins. He is the all-time season leader rushing, the only 2,000-yard rusher in Ohio State history. And he was on that 2019 team. And for me, I think that 2019 team is maybe the best team ever assembled that didn't win a national title at Ohio State. Like, you could argue 97, 98, those type teams, but that 2019 team, like, really, they were right there. And should have beat Clemson, didn't. But we're gonna go with those top 4 that you guys went. We'll go with JK as our honorable mention there. I had Maurice Clarett in the top 10. I also I put Chick Harley and Cassidy in there too as honorable mentions, but also Beanie Wells. Like, he's not good enough to make the top 4. But he was really good.
He was a damn good running back.
He was. And, guys like Robert Smith, when, like, Ohio State was based on the run game back then. And, Tim Spencer, you forget about guys like that. Ohio State had a damn good class of running backs for many, many years. But I think we can all agree. I think we all agreed those 4. So we're going to go with Archie, obviously, number 1, and then in whatever order you got Eddie George, Zeke, and Keith Byers. So are going to be our top 4 for our Mount Rushmore. Now, I think this is going to be the toughest one. So we're going to go to wide receiver or pass catcher, if you want to throw in Ricky Dudley in this list or whatever, or whoever. But Ohio State has just been blessed with so many amazing receivers. And you could argue we're not going to include Marvin Harrison Jr. on this list because he is, I see Dave's jumping in a second, so we'll bring him in. But I don't think we can't put Marvin Harrison on this list. However, I think after this year, he's probably going to crack that top 4.
He would be on it. He'd be on it right now if we were including, current players. I think he'd be on it.
Okay.
I said this before last season, Marvin Harrison was going to be better than his dad, and that's a tough bar to pass, but he's passing it.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, we're bringing in Dave. He's he is connecting.
You can call it. You can call to the bullpen.
Bringing in the closer here. Dave, can you hear us?
I hear you, but I don't know why my video is not showing.
This guy's an IT guy and can't get his video to work.
Well, I got this camera here. Who knows? All right,
we're just messing with you.
Yeah,
so
go ahead and mess with me. It's fine. There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
I'm alone.
Kind of. All right, there we go.
Kind of.
Dave, we already did quarterbacks and running backs. So let me just tell you our ratings so far. So we just did running backs. We all had Archie Griffin, your boy Eddie George, Zeke, and then we had Keith Byers as our fourth. Would you have put anybody else in that top four?
I had Dobbins in the list too.
Okay.
I mean, second in attempts, second in yards overall. That was my lean, but can't argue with your choice.
No, and actually,
other three for sure.
Well, I actually had J.K. Dobbins in my top four. Those two had Zeke.
We have a tie for fourth.
So yeah,
we may have five guys up there.
Maybe we'll split their heads in half.
Yeah.
I was going to make an Abraham Lincoln joke there, and I decided to hold back.
I'm more curious what you want with quarterback.
All right, so quarterbacks were we were actually pretty. We all had we only had one vote outside the top four guys. But so we went with Troy Smith. We went with CJ. Justin Fields only got 2 votes, but he got a first and a second place vote. And then we went with JT Barrett. So Rex Kern got an additional vote. So anybody different on that list?
I had all 4 of them. So
okay.
I think JT is the highest, though. I mean, I also was kind of looking at the only thing that I have Stroud's obviously awesome, and I think he'll have a great career and all that, and he's up there on the record board. But his 0-2 versus Michigan as a starter, I think that's the one glance. Yeah. So.
Yep. And not necessarily by his performance either.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's I wouldn't put that on him. It's
no, it's not. It's just
yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I think a lot can go in the defense those years, but all right, let's go to wide receiver now, and I think this is going to be the interesting one here. And now that there's 4 of us, we'll see how the votes go. So, Brett, you want to lead this one off?
Yeah, I can do that.
Oh, and Dave, by the way, we were talking to Marvin Harrison Jr. We're not going to include on this list. It's got to be former players only. But we said he probably cracks the top 4 after this season.
I would agree there. Yeah.
All right. Sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
Oh no, we're good. We're good. We've had a little recency bias in what we've been doing. Dobbins, Stroud, Fields, all those have come into play. I'm actually not going so much that route, as great as these recent wide receivers have been.
Yeah.
I guess in no particular order. David Boston.
Okay.
To me, he's number 1. I said no order, but he's number 1 to me. Then I got to go Chris Carter. After that, it gets a little murky, but I'm going 2 battery mates, or 2 wide receiver mates, I should say, and Holmes and Ginn Jr.
Interesting. Okay.
I love Michael Jenkins too. It was hard to leave him out, but I love Ted Ginn. He was just unreal. So my honorable mentions are Jenkins and Galloway.
Okay. All right. So, but your 4 are Chris Carter, David Boston, Ginn, and Santonio Holmes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Dave. Let's go to you. What would be your top 4? And don't go into honorable mentions yet. We'll go into those at the end.
This was actually the one where I couldn't pick my 4th of all the ones out there, and I didn't actually rank them per se, but I do have Carter as well. I do have Boston as well. I did put Michael Jenkins on there. He had the most yards I see, and the Holy Buckeye. It's just a great moment there too. For the 4th, it's It's a couple of great. I had a lot. I mean, I can't argue with Holmes. I guess. I mean, he would be a good choice. Terry Glenn, kind of thought about that. Jackson Smith and Jigwa for more recent. So I'll just go. I'll stick with Holmes. I'll go with Franklin. I'll agree there.
Okay. All right.
A wild card pick on the fly.
Interesting. I will say I have Santonio Holmes, and I love the guy, minus the fact that he played for the Steelers. I have him as my number 9 overall. So like he's a little bit like I loved him as a player, but I have him a little bit more down my list. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, this is really hard. And I'm making some kind of game time decisions as we go too, because and this is definitely in no particular order because I don't really know that I could do an order. I have Chris Carter. I have Ted Ginn.
Mm-hmm.
I have Terry Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with the 4th, I'll go with David Boston, although it's really hard to leave Joey Galloway off of this list. But I'll go with David Boston because he was an absolute man-child.
I will say, and this isn't my pick, but I will say Joey Galloway was my first player I loved at Ohio State growing up. I just remember that number 7 jersey, and he was like the fastest person I ever remember seeing. And he was just so good. And that like kind of, I watched some Ohio State and I watched some football before that, like mostly NFL stuff, but that was like the first guy I like related to watching. But I think we can all lock Chris Carter and David Boston in based on our votes. And then it's going to be tricky, these other two. So I'm going with Carter and Boston. That's actually, I had Chris Carter 1, David Boston 2. I have Ted Ginn 3 on my list because of, I think he actually started at Ohio State as a corner, and he was such a great athlete. And that's that Tressel thing too. He finally flipped him, used him as a weapon, and he was maybe had one of the most elite traits of any Ohio State player I ever remember. You just get the ball in his hand and crazy things happen. And I still wonder in that 2006 national championship game, if he does not get hurt after returning that opening kickoff, if things don't change, Florida maybe doesn't win, Urban Meyer maybe doesn't win his, would have been his first national title, Urban Meyer's.
Yeah, it was.
So
yep.
That could have really changed the course of his career. That could have really, Ohio State would have got over like the SEC hump early. It could have changed the course of history a lot there. So Ted Ginn for me. So I think those are our 3. And then we're going to have a debate at 4, I think, here. So that's how we'll close this offensive one out. So my 4th guy, I'm going to go with a more recent guy. I really wanted to go Michael Jenkins here, but I decided not to. I'm going to go with Chris Olave as my 4th. Even though he was the one guy that didn't have the 1,000-yard receiving season, because he didn't play in the Rose Bowl a couple years ago, but he came on against Michigan and just let himself be known in that game, and then just was a smooth receiver. And again, I admit it, I have some like fondness for that 2019 team. I don't know what it is, but that team was just awesome. So what we have here is we have 3 guys locked into a 4-man team, but then Santonio Holmes has 2 votes. So so it sounds like we're going to bump him up there. But so other possibilities, let's just throw out some honorable mentions. So it sounds like our 4 are going to be Chris Carter, David Boston, Ted Ginn Jr., and Santonio Holmes. So those are going to be based on our 4 opinions. That's there. But Garrett Wilson didn't get a vote. Michael Thomas didn't get a vote. Joey Galloway didn't get a vote. Terry Glenn only got 1. Smith and Jigba didn't get a vote. So what do you guys think on those other guys?
Yeah, I will say, like, Michael Thomas, like, it's hard to believe that, like, he's not even on this, like, in the list in a way, just from his NFL career. Like, he's such a stud in the NFL. But I think we all were kind of maybe agree he was kind of underutilized at Ohio State in some ways. I mean, he pulled through at times, but like not like any of those other guys in terms of like a weapon that we used all the time. So that's tough.
Honestly, outside of maybe one of the top 2 or 3 catches in Ohio State history and in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, I can't sit here and recall like a specific Michael Thomas Ohio State highlight outside of that. It was kind of one of those guys that just he just got better and better, and it was like I think he just was starting to really become a big time receiver, and then he went to the NFL and he just took off.
He's probably not even in top 10 for people, but it is interesting in talking about how we kind of left Michael Thomas off to the side. KJ Hill was the all-time leading receiver. Not even sniffing part of the conversation. And it goes to show you the depth though of the wide receivers that have gone to Ohio State. There's so many of them, and it's not stopping.
So I will say, so we have our 4, and the one reason I like Santonio Holmes on this list, something I will never forget, a game he didn't even play in, at least that I remember. National Championship 2002. He's on the top of that huddle. I think he's wearing number 82 or something. He's a true freshman. He's getting everybody fired up for that game. So that will always, remain with me there. And I think we have our top 3, and then some of these new guys coming in, especially Marvin Harrison Jr. Knock on wood, stays healthy. I think he pole vaults to maybe 1, maybe if not 1, maybe 2 on this list after this season. So we were hoping that for Smith and Jigba, but obviously got hurt this past season. So we'll see on that. But all right, I think those are pretty solid lists. That's going to be our offensive one. Guys, we'll run it back here in a minute, and we're going to do the defensive side of the ball. So we will be right